Alright, so this is gonna be one of these bizarre redesigns that we're gonna attempt here on this channel. So what I'm gonna do is take the beast that is the Silverado EV, the new truck. It does look very cool. It has a very futuristic approach to it, and I really prefer this style over the F-150 Lightning, which is more of a conservative style truck, if you want to call it that. But they both have a very cool LED front light bar, which is typical for, I guess, truck EVs. You have the Rivian, the Silverado, the Ford F-150, the Cybertruck, and so on. Seems to be a trend to put that both in the front now and also in the rear of a lot of cars. So what I want to do now is just go crazy on this design right here, and yes, try to turn this into a sedan. I am not sure how we're going to do that exactly, but what we're gonna have to do basically is change the entire proportions of this thing. So if we copy, for example, this piece right here, I think if we go this height of the design or the proportions, the entire bodywork of this Silverado EV, I think this is the height we should start with. And then once we have this, what we need to do is, of course, copy paste this piece that we just selected and then move it down like this. Have a look at this. See what's happening here? We're turning it into a lowrider Silverado right now. I think it looks pretty cool like this, just like this, having it lower. And then if we, for example, just copy this background here and blow that up into, let's see where we want that layer right there. If we just blow this up and cover the back, you can see that it's starting to look very, very interesting here right now with this lower riding pickup truck. This could be maybe like a sportier version of the Silverado EV that doesn't have a mountain or a building as a front fascia. Very vertical front end of the Silverado. It looks pretty cool, but of course we're gonna have to do a lot more than this if we want to turn this into a sedan. So other than this, we need to, of course, extend the C-pillar, and we need to extend this piece at the back here. So maybe have it something all the way back like this. Of course, this is a very, very quick ideation of what it is I need to be done here with the proportions. It is a major surgery that we're gonna have to do here to turn this Silverado truck into an actual sedan, or sedan looking. I'm gonna call it sedan looking because it's probably not gonna be a very sedan looking design, and this turned out horrible, that little change that is this. So let's just switch that back to this lowrider, and then I'm gonna have to take a lot of time figuring out how to move forward with this design. But with that said, let's just continue here and let's see where we end up at the end of this redesign. As I'm sure you've already heard about the Silverado EV truck. If you haven't, it's pretty big news because it's a 100% electric truck from Chevy, and it's their first fully electric truck. And as I said, I prefer this design language over the Ford F-150 design because I think they both have a market. There were some really, you know, people who have had a truck for 20-30 years. I think they're probably gonna lean more towards the F-150 design and approach because it's more in line of what we already know when it comes to design. And then we have people that kind of are new to trucks. I think they're gonna lean more towards the Silverado EV because it's more of an experimental design, at least in my opinion. So it will range from $40,000 to $100,000 for the fully loaded SRT model. And the base model, I think it looks very cool in the Silverado EV, the work truck as they call it. It will have up to 400 miles of range and up to 664 horsepower. And I want to turn these horsepower into sedan horsepower. I think it's going to be, this design is going to look something like a very bulky, maybe off-road looking sedan. But the thing is, you got to keep in mind, when we have EVs these days, we can play around with the proportions as much as we like because we don't have an internal combustion engine that needs to fit in the front. We don't have a big transmission that needs to go under the car. We can play around with the wheelbase and stretch out the wheelbase. However, I'm not a fan of this EQS bean shape where you have the wheelbase all the way stretched out to the very end points of the car. Looking at it from a side view, it looks like, I don't know, something feels off with that type of design, and I think it has to do with it doesn't have a movement either forward or backwards. Looking at it from a side view, you have the same overhang lengths on the front and the rear, and it gives it a very static look, almost like a capsule of some sort, and not a sculpture of speed and motion that I think internal combustion engines proportions usually do a lot better than the EVs that we've seen recently. For the Silverado EV here, initially only 2 trim levels will be available, and that will be the work truck for $39,900, and you will have, and the work truck will have 510 horsepower and 615 pound-feet of torque. So it's not going to be a slow truck, even though it is the base. It's pretty cool tech and performance that you get for $39,000. And it will have the same 400-mile range as the top-level trim RST. I think that's an upgrade. I might be wrong there, I'm not 100% sure, but I think if you want to have the work truck, you gotta pay a little, with 400-mile range, you gotta pay a little more than $39,900, which is the very, very base work truck, the trim that it comes in. The fully loaded RST, that's the one we're basing this redesign on here. I love this blue color as well, very deep, almost purple-like color. But this will set you back $105,000, which is pretty steep when you think that this is actually a Chevy Silverado. If you said that in the 70s or 80s or 90s that a Chevy Silverado, there would be a Chevy Silverado that's going to cost you $105,000, people would go nuts. But at the same time, there's a lot of cool technology, design, and performance here that you get for the money. And of course, you have this massive 24-inch wheels on the RST and wide open watts mode, or WOW mode for short, and this is what gives you instant access to the 664 horsepower and 780 pound-feet of torque, which is just nuts. When you're in WOW mode, you can go from 0 to 60, and keep in mind that this is a big truck. This is not a small vehicle and a heavy vehicle. But if you're in the WOW mode here, you can go from 0 to 60 in the Silverado EV in less than 4.5 seconds. What a time to be alive this is with this EV explosion and this EV performance that we have in packages we've never seen before. It's crazy. Underneath this beautiful body, we have independent front and rear suspension, front and rear electric motors, and an electrical architecture capable of charging at 800 volts and 350 kilowatts. And this will give you 100 miles of range in just about 10 minutes, which I'm not sure. I think that's a little longer than the average gas stop fill up, but it's not by much, and you get 100 miles in 10 minutes. So it's a pretty good deal. I think it's a really good deal here. On the inside is where Chevy really stepped it up. I've talked about this before. The new Silverado, the regular Silverado, compared to the previous one, which looks like it was still the same design as they had in 1996 all the way up to 2021. Thankfully, they came through the senses here, Chevy, and decided to upgrade everything across the board, specifically on the interiors. And they have a brand new interior here as well, obviously in this new EV truck, but also in the regular Silverado, which I think looks a lot more modern than the old 96 design that we have in the 2021 models. There's a massive 17-inch center screen and an 11-inch digital gauge cluster in the RST, while the work truck comes with an 11-inch center display and an 8-inch screen in the gauge cluster, which sounds pretty good to me. So let's have a look here what's going on with the redesign. How's it coming along here? I think it looks pretty cool. As I said, it's going to be a pretty bulky looking thing, this, but I think it would be cool to have almost like an off-road sedan going, a rugged looking thing. We can have the same 650 whatever horsepower as we have in the Silverado EV, but in a package like this. And if the Silverado EV is claimed to have a 400-mile range, if we have it in a more slippery design like this, we might even go up to 450 miles on one range or something like that. I don't know. I'm just going crazy here in Photoshop and having some fun trying to work out these proportions here of how to make this actually work. I had a lot of fun doing it. I hope you had a lot of fun watching it as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.